Rockstar already got big, and they still make good games.
That's true.
BioWare, as they got bigger, the quality
Not so much.
started to slide.
It didn't work out as well.
And then, I mean, there's the whole thing where like EA opened studios that were under the BioWare name, but didn't have anything to do with the original BioWare, which I think is what the Mass Effect Andromeda team was. If what I read is correct, which it's the internet.
Yeah, well, everything's true on the internet. I just assume until proven otherwise. I believe everything that's on there. Yeah. Somebody in this room is probably a lizard person. I'm assuming, based on the statistics that I've read online.
I think statistically, someone on the planet is
a lizard person. Yeah, that's just a fact. So that's what we all know. All right, I think we're coming in live right here, right about now. So let's go ahead and get this started. So this is our Close to the Metal Computing podcast, where we go in depth with specific topics of computing. And today's topic is Mass Effect Andromeda. So we're live on Facebook and YouTube, and we want to hear your comments. I know there's probably going to be a lot of comments, a lot of things that people think about this, what you've heard, what you've read. We know there's a lot of controversy that's going on with it, and we want to get into that today. But to start off here, I'm Greg Nibbler, and let's introduce our panel.
I'm Brad Burke.
And
Matt Smith.
All right, so like I said, live on YouTube and Facebook. So drop your comments in. I will gather those and get those to the team. If you have questions, let us know. But let's hop right into it. So Mass Effect, you've probably read a lot of the reviews that are online, and we're going to go, like I said, in depth with a lot of those topics. But let's just get to you guys right now. What are your thoughts so far? What are your thoughts that you've about this game? Let's just get to the
Mass Effect Andromeda, the long-awaited new entry in the Mass Effect series, appears to be not all that great.
Dun, dun, dun.
So this has been a very controversial game, and the reason it was controversial is because, well, first it was very hyped up, which you would expect. Mass Effect was this franchise that a lot of people loved, and then it just kind of got dropped.
Yeah,
and there was like not a lot of
it's been like 5 years, right?
Yeah, I think it's been 5 years,
like that.
And we didn't really hear about Andromeda until like a year and a half, 2 years ago. So there was like a pretty solid like period where there was just not really anything happening with it. So a lot of people were just very thirsty for their Mass Effect fix, and then they did this whole like review rollout where it was like, what was it? It was like you could publish like the first few hours at the beginning. And that was like a week and a half or a week before. And then they had early access for people that like are Origin Access subscribers. So people were giving their impressions from that. And then finally, yesterday, the full reviews came out. And it ended up just kind of having this snowball effect of like people finding issues with the game and talking about them. And it's just trickling out more and more.
Right. I was just going to say, before we even went on, Brad was showing me on Twitter how many different screen claps there are.
Yeah.
I think people realized there was something wrong when they put out this like 4K trailer, and they were like, look how beautiful this game is, and they noticed that one of the like side characters, one of the main characters, is holding a gun backwards. That it was like, this was sort of, I remember seeing this sort of pop up, and it was sort of this red flag that like, like something might not be right with this game.
And that's on the trailer for a major release.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a huge game. Like you said, the hype's been going on for a long time. They've been teasing this game and promoting it. And to have somebody with a gun backward in the actual thing, and that's supposedly still in the gameplay, right?
Yes, I think you were saying it's.
I mean, the last time that I played through the part where she does some shooting, that's what I saw, and I haven't played through that part since the final release. But I mean,
they said there wouldn't be a day one update to address some of the issues that I was having, so I assume that's included.
So anyway, and then the intro came out, and there was a lot of issues with animations and dialogue and whatnot, and it ended up being quite the journey. And we gave it a 5. We gave it a 2.5 star.
Wow.
Review out of 5.
Dang.
Which is considered pretty harsh. In video game world.
Right.
Now we should say that that's considered an adequate rating by the Digital Trends review scale.
Okay.
And as keeping all products to the same review scale, that basically means it's a game that can be fun sometimes, but has some issues.
Has some major issues.
But I mean, also on Metacritic, last time I checked, it was a 75, and a 75 on Metacritic for a AAA game is pretty low. It hasn't been received all that well.
And that seems to be pretty universal, like you just said. It's 75% on there.
There's just so many bugs.
Yeah,
and weird.
Which is just so strange that this huge release would have that many issues. That they wouldn't figure all of this out ahead of time. And as like I said, we're live on Facebook and YouTube, so feel free to drop your comments in there. Juan says, "Nope, fix the game, then we'll talk." before before one wants to get it. Jess, thank you for your shout out there. But so yeah, let your comments come in through here, and if you're going to be buying the game, because it's just out today, right? The full release.
Yeah.
It dropped at like 9 p.m. last night.
9 p.m. last night.
I think it was midnight Eastern last night.
So if maybe you're one of the people who went out and actually already purchased the game, let us know what your thoughts are. Let's see. Braxton says, "I'll wait."
Did you say went out and purchased the game?
If you went out, went out.
I think you just buy it on the internet.
I meant, okay, you're right. That is a good call. Dang it, I would have tried to run that over so that way it wouldn't have happened, but I got called out on it. So Brad just trolled me. All right, so, no, all right, taking a look, though, at the comments. You're right. Braxton says, I'll wait until it's on sale, perhaps when it's selling for around $15. Courtney says, man, I don't understand why they do not do more massive play testing to sort this stuff out. That's a good question. Why would they not do that? Why would they not put it up more?
Matt? Theories, Brad?
I don't know. And I mean, it's not like people haven't, seen bits and pieces of the game, at conventions and that sort of thing. But yeah, it really feels like, because you could think some of the things really deep into the game, even with a lot of playtesting, you might miss that. You might not explore certain parts of it, and you might not see those things. But some of these issues are really glaring. That they
like
really,
a backward gun.
that even just, and I think we have one coming up here where this from the guy who reviewed it, from Phil Hornshaw from Digital Trends, tweeted a bunch of his videos and images and stuff, and this is one of them where this Krogan is just, he keeps doing stuff.
Yeah,
and other people are talking, and this is my favorite part. He goes like, "Boom."
Yeah, if you can see the video, it's just this character is talking, and his arms are just flailing around for no reason, making weird hand gestures.
He crashes a ship into his hand and it blows up. And at the end when he's talking, he kind of gives a little low grumble. I don't know. It's just why is this
mad
happening?
Krogan and everybody run.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it's hilarious, but it doesn't make any sense why that would make it through the production process.
That's a recurring issue. Where characters will just be in animation loops they shouldn't be in. Yesterday I was playing it and I was going by a landing pad for a shuttle, right? And there's this lady standing there and she appears to have the drunk stumbling animation. So she's just sitting there by the landing pad by herself being
wobbling back and forth.
Whoa, what? Oh, what's going on? I'm like, what's your deal? And it wasn't someone you could talk to. It was just some random
random
NPC
drunk
that gotten in the wrong animation loop. And it was funny, but it also definitely wasn't supposed to be happening. And there's been a lot of examples of that.
It's just that. That's just a handful of examples that we're seeing with this thing. Seeing the comments come through. Gary on Facebook says this is EA all over, failed launches and bad patches from the get-go. Has EA developed that reputation?
Well, I think that it depends on the developer.
Okay.
Because, I think Battlefield, for example, rolls out pretty well.
Yeah.
Battlefield 4, some of the Battlefields have had some issues, but nothing that I remember being catastrophic, and the games run really well, which we'll get into here in just a second. Everything that's made by DICE has very smooth frame rates, and it's a very beautiful game. You don't see animation jankiness generally, so it's definitely, I think, also something that's on the studio that made.
So it's on, yeah.
I do feel there is
fronts.
there is sort of that idea out in the ethos that there is this, sort of EA kind of meddling fingers, though. Star Wars: The Old Republic is one where they sort of, BioWare started out with this really, this MMO engine that they were working with, and then EA sort of came in and said, no, you have to use this other engine that we've already paid for, and it caused massive performance issues, and it killed that game. A lot of people were very excited about this MMO from Star Wars and voice acted everything, and it really dropped off quickly because of really glaring issues with the engine and sort of almost this same kind of thing where it was things that people should have caught before it came out.
And maybe you could say the same here because the Mass Effect Andromeda uses the Frostbite engine.
Right. Yeah, let's talk about that. Frostbite instead of Unreal, which they used for the last 3 games,
or
right?
some other engine,
or a different engine.
Better
so they're
suited.
Using Frostbite on this new one. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which has been around since, in some iteration, for most of the Battlefield games. I think it's Frostbite 3 now, but it's an old engine. It's
a good engine.
Yeah, it's one we've seen.
It's a really good engine
usually.
Then why is it failing on this iteration?
So Frostbite. I think it's fair to say that Frostbite, as implemented in the Battlefield games, is one of the best technical examples on PC. Like, the Battlefield games look stunning. They've always looked stunning, and despite that, they've always ran extremely well. You can get a Battlefield game, you can get Battlefield 1, and you can run on a pretty mid-range PC with almost everything cranked up, and it's going to look amazing. But that's their engine. The developer that makes Battlefield, that's their baby. Now, BioWare started using it with Dragon Age Inquisition. And even there, back then, and Dragon Age Inquisition didn't have like the degree of issues that you see with Andromeda, but I think there was still kind of a sense that engine was not being used all that well.
Yeah.
There was one of the problems that was a recurring issue is that it's kind of like there's kind of like this weird sheen to how everything looks in the game. Kind of like I've had people describe it as sort of a greasiness or sort of like an artificial like everything's made of clay sort of look. And I think that's true of both Inquisition and Andromeda. It's not really true of the Battlefield series, but the way BioWare is implementing this engine, they seem to have this consistent issue. Maybe it's a choice they have made. Maybe it's a technical limitation that they couldn't quite figure out how to implement their vision as well as they should have. But, and also Inquisition, I don't think it ran that well when it came out. It was a pretty taxing game without it looking that great on PC.
Yeah.
So I think BioWare is just having trouble getting this really great engine, but implementing it in the way that they want.
Do you think part of that comes down to a difference in genre, maybe, too?
Oh, yeah.
That, like, if you're playing a shooter, you're moving through areas quickly, you're looking around quickly, you're snap shooting, you're not stopping most of the time to, stand in a bar with other characters and talk to them.
There's actually a Mark here on Facebook just said, Frostbite is a good FPS engine. This game is third person. That might be it. So kind of,
I think it's definitely a contributing factor. Point. Yeah, like especially when you talk about like facial animations, and they're trying to do that, in engine here, whereas like Battlefield, you almost never see that. Like most of the time, it's like, oh, we're gonna go to a little cutscene, or like one person will come up to you and like hand you a gun, and off you go. Like there isn't a lot of like, there aren't conversations happening in engine.
Yeah. Battlefield is definitely a different kind of game, so that could be part of what the problem is in the translation over to an RPG, which has a lot more characters on screen, generally speaking. That's actually something you notice with the technical implementation and with Andromeda. There's not a lot of characters on the screen.
Yeah.
Actually, I haven't heard a lot about that because with all the other issues, it kind of feels down on the list. But if you look at other hit games, like let's say a great example of this is Hitman, which that's kind of like Hitman's thing. Like Hitman has a ton of characters on the screen. But even with the Assassin's Creed games, for example, and other AAA titles, there are a lot more characters on screen than you see with Andromeda. And there's kind of excuse for that because it's the ARC, there's not a lot of people around. But I suspect that it's more of some sort of limitation they had on the technical side, that they probably couldn't get a big area with a ton of people in it and get it to run really well. So
so that's another issue then coming up with that. And I see a lot of people actually chiming in on the same thing that we were just talking about with Frostbite. One other side comment here I just wanted to bring up really quick. Courtney loves your Run the Jewels sweatshirt.
Thank you.
Brad has an awesome Run the Jewels shirt on. All right, so going with that, so talking about the engine, and keep those comments coming in. If you're on Facebook and YouTube, I'm seeing them. A lot more people are joining in. Jaybird from Cleveland. We've got a bunch of different people there. So let's talk about render scaling. Do you want to get into that? Skip ahead to that part of it, Brad. I know you.
I'm livid about this.
I know you are worked up. Brad's all hot about this. So.
So we one of our staff writer, Jace Wagner, wrote this, and I had to go on a trip. Matt had to go on a trip. We left him to run this, and like the first thing he said to me is, by the way, like medium and low automatically changed the render scale, and I was furious. Like, because the whole thing about you drop your, you can set these things on your own on a PC. You can say, like, I want to run it at my native resolution. I'm just going to push the settings down. And in a lot of cases, I think that's, it's a good way to do it depending on what those presets look like. And to just bake that into a preset kind of defeats the purpose.
And what is render scale?
Sorry, yeah. So the idea is that like if you have
he's too mad.
if you have a 1080p screen, you can run your game at 1080p, or if you can't quite keep up with that resolution, you could turn it down to 1280 by 720. But because you're not running at native resolution anymore, there's going to be some weirdness. It's not going to like look as nice, and especially things like UI elements, which don't necessarily need to be loaded at a lower resolution, start to look pixelated, and it can cause problems, especially if you drop it really low. And one of the ways that games recently have gotten around this is it lets you set the resolution and the render scale independently. So you can say, like, I'm going to run it at 1080p, and I'm going to get all my UI elements at 1080p, and then the game itself, like in-engine things, will render at a lower resolution and save me frames.
Okay.
It's a really good way to do things, and I think it's awesome, but...
If it's an option.
Because the whole thing is people are going to open the game, and they're going to pick a preset, they're going to say medium high, they're going to try it at ultra, maybe. They're going to turn it down, whatever is going to happen. Right. But they're going to hit medium, and immediately they're going to say, like, this looks like garbage. Like, immediately it's going to be like, why does this look so much? Because the medium is where it starts to turn on the render scale.
Yeah.
And I think he was saying it's...
So, medium is 900p. So, let's say you've got a 1080p monitor. So... Now you've set it the medium to get your performance, and now the game engine is actually rendering things at 1600 by 900. And that's kind of a tactic that a game console will use to save on frame rate. And it can be effective, but it softens up the whole image, because now you have this basically a lower resolution rendering that is being shown at a higher resolution. And whenever you do that, you can replicate this by going in an image editor and then blow up the resolution of the image by twice as much, and it's going to be all blurry. And medium, that's fairly bad, but the worst is low, because low sets it to 720p, which means that if you're on a 1080p screen, like it really does look like garbage. Like it's just like it's all blurry, and it looks like almost like it looks like an early PS3 or Xbox 360 era game.
Yeah, that's horrible.
And honestly, I think remembering back to the original Mass Effect, I remember that game looking nicer than this.
I recently played them. It does look nicer than that. If you're playing
the original Mass Effect, it looks nicer.
Those games, when those games came out, they were very very evocative and artistic, and it was like people, like characters were deep and intriguing, and facial expressions were cool for the time. And
grant you, like the original, if you go back and you play the original Mass Effect, then as compared to the Andromeda scaled down to like 720p, Andromeda does technically have much higher polygon counts and much better lighting and all these different technical things. But because that low preset is bumping the render resolution down to 720p, it kind of chucks all those improvements out the window.
So it doesn't matter what they've done.
You're not noticing them because it's so blurry and soft, and it just doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Whereas with Mass Effect 1, the problem there is like the original textures are not very high. So there's this blurry, and it doesn't matter what resolution you play it on. But even so, it actually, in some cases, can end up looking sharper than a low-resolution Andromeda if you're playing on 1080p, especially if you're playing it on 1440p. So, yeah, it's a really weird choice. And we have an article on Digital Trends. You can go look at our screenshots on that article. We did screenshots of every preset with the render scale on and with the render scale off.
Yeah.
And you can turn it off, and that gets rid of the problem.
You can't turn it off within the preset, though. You have to go set to custom and then replicate the low preset.
I'm not sure if that's how it works. I think you might be able to just turn off the preset, and it will leave this preset settings, and then you can change the render scale. But still, like, doesn't that sound like something that's most people might blow by?
Right.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I think you got to assume that like your average user is going to go with whatever the default is.
Yeah, you would assume that out of the box that's going to be.
I mean, that's true with any device. It doesn't matter if it's a game or what.
No, yeah, it's not until you really start fine tuning it that you switch gears on anything like that.
So I'm just not sure why they would undercut their presentation so much by going with a render scale difference by default.
Mark is saying here is it looks gorgeous on 4K.
I mean, I guess.
You've tried it on. Matt, have you tried it on everything on 4K as well?
I haven't actually looked at it at 4K.
Okay.
I feel like it probably does look good at 4K, but most games.
But most people,
do.
yeah, and a lot of people aren't going to be playing it at 4K.
Well, yeah,
so.
and I wonder too. It's always comparative. Like if it might look nice at 4K, but Deus Ex looks super nice at 4K. Like that game is gorgeous at 4K with the settings up. If you can run it, So
Forza Horizon 3 at 4K, that is just it's almost like real life.
These games used to be kind of a showpiece. Like they really were. Like Mass Effect was like beautiful. It was like, wow, look at this space game we made. And that was a hard standard for them to live up to, but clearly they fell way short of it.
Quite a way short. Yeah, quite a way short. Well, just the bottom line then on the render scaling, Brad, is don't avoid the presets.
Yeah,
avoid
you just gotta tinker stuff.
You have to go
own.
that until you figure out the right way for it to work. That is kind of annoying when you're first starting in game.
The nice thing is, though, I think a lot of mid-range gaming systems will be able to run this game at higher ultra settings.
Yeah,
because it is well optimized, and our 1060.
We tested it on a GTX 1060.
Okay.
In a system that had a 6950X processor, so not a processor limitation really. And at Ultra, it averaged 34 frames per second.
Okay.
Which feels all right, I guess. Now, it went up to 66 frames per second on high, though. And I think that's where most people are going to play. And, this is another one of those situations. We see this with a lot of games where the difference between Ultra and high, like going up to that very tip-top setting, tends to be like a big impact with not necessarily a lot of quality that's noticeable. So, I'd say for most people the high is fine. And a 1060 is a $200 video card. I think people will be pretty pleased with that performance of 66 frames per second. That was with the render scaling on. It looks like with the render scaling off, it was 42 frames per second. So that's actually not quite as hot.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the actual gameplay. Is the game itself worth playing? If you can overlook all of these issues, what do you think, Matt? Like as far as the actual game?
No, not really.
So even that part, it's falling short on.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, our review of it was 2.5 out of 5, adequate. And
was that more for the actual gameplay or because of all the other issues that we're talking about?
Well, it was also because of the gameplay.
Combo.
I mean, it's and actually there's some opinions back and forth with this. Some people say they like the shooting gameplay. I think the shooting gameplay is pretty mediocre.
Okay.
I think there's also technical implementation issues there. One of them is I have no idea why it's like this. So it's a cover-based shooter, right?
Yeah.
And you get in the cover, and sometimes your camera's like over the wrong shoulder, so the game doesn't detect that. The game,
which just seems like
most,
issue after
most
issue.
third person. I've seen this before, but most of the time, cover-based shooters are designed to take into account to the camera.
Yeah,
they're going to try and give you the proper look.
Right.
But Andromeda doesn't try at all. So you have to press a button to change which direction you're looking, or else you're going to be staring in the side of a box. That's annoying. I don't understand why it would be like that. It just seems like a weird choice that some more development could have gotten rid of. So that's an issue. You have a jetpack, and that's fun, except tends to catch on terrain sometimes, and you have this weird climbing animation that's slow and annoying. I just... the shooting, things get shot and they die, but the AI is not good for your teammates or for the enemies.
This just sounds like from top to bottom, there's just issues in every single facet of this
game.
I
mean, I'm a really big Mass Effect fan, so at some point I'm probably going to buy this game and play it. Maybe it's like $20.
Okay, so wait for the price to come down. Yeah, Braxton is saying you guys are talking me out of buying it for any price. Too many issues to deal with currently. Do you think this is anything they can fix with patches, or is this is where it's at?
Some of it. I mean, they said there's no Day Zero patch to like help with the animation stuff.
Yeah.
And the weird the gun thing and the running and maybe the extra aliens and the aliens that make hand motions. I don't know. Like they've just kind of
I kind of like the aliens making hand motions.
It was kind of fun to watch him. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't know what you can't fix gameplay issues though. Like a game is a game, and you can try, but
Yeah, I mean,
People
I'll
already
just
have a
say-
distaste for it, then like it's kind of sunk. Like it was like the same thing
Yeah.
with Mafia 3. Like that game came out on PC, it was capped at 30 frames per second. There were all these issues, and people like the game now, but not people who played it then.
Yeah.
Not people who picked it up when it was broken.
Waiting for the patch is foolish. Don't buy it and wait for the patch. Wait to see what happens, and then pick it up. Because,
Wait till they fix it, then buy it.
Yeah, because this is what we always hear. Like, we heard this before the game came out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they came out with some early trailers of the game. There was one in particular where the main character like goes into this hideout and is having like this intense conversation with the leader of this, like, I don't know, it's like a mafia planet or something. And the voice acting wasn't very good, and the animations were pretty dull.
Even down to the voice acting is bad now.
And people noticed that when the trailer came out, and they were like, "Hey, like," so there was like two factions. Some people were like, "Oh man, this doesn't look like a good sign," and other people were like, "No, don't worry about it. It's not final VO. Like it'll be cool," and that's sort of the lesson that we always learn from these things. Like when you see something that's like they either give you a trailer or a gameplay tidbit or the actual game's out and it's like this.
Why
like,
wouldn't it be the final VO? You don't do too many scratch runs of that to set out for an actual
like
trailer.
you can't, like, you can hope that they'll fix it, and every now and then a developer does. Like Diablo 3, for example, was terrible when it came out, and now it's a really good action RPG.
Only because you didn't like to, you didn't want to make a job out of it. Because I know people who just sold things on the Real Money Auction House and just lived that way.
Sure, it was a great way to make a living, but not a great game. But EA is not Blizzard, and I just wouldn't expect.
If you wait long enough, it might go free to play. Maybe it'll just be microtransaction based.
And James is popping in here. I see a couple of people popping in right now towards the end. Well, let me just get to the bottom line of this. What went wrong here? Why did it? Do you have any theories of why they put out this product that they've promoted so much? They've had 5 years to make it. It's a huge release. People were really excited about it. And why, just from top to bottom, is it just so poor? Why is it this bad? Is there just no answer for that? Who knows?
That's the like $30 or $40 or $50 million question,
right? Yeah.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see what kind of post-mortems come out of this, if anything. Because they might just, round up the bandwagons and say everyone had to sign an NDA about their employment or whatever. I mean, that's totally possible. But I think it really just comes down to it's a big game. There's hundreds of employees working on it, and it has to be managed right, and everyone needs to be on board, and that probably didn't happen.
Yeah, you sent too many people
going
different directions.
I feel like you can kind of see that in how the game plays, because there are like bits of the game that are fun, or you like see something and be like, "That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really cool scene. That character looks really cool. That gun looks cool. It sounds cool. It fires. Does something neat when it fires. I have a cool ability. You can do these abilities that you fly through the air and charge a guy, and they're like, oh, that's awesome. And then you turn the corner and you see someone who's in the wrong animation loop, or you get into a conversation where, like, it literally sounds like they recorded part of the voice acting on one day, part of it on another, and no one tried to. So that tells you, like, it's probably not an issue with someone just didn't do voice acting well enough. It's people, getting all these different things and putting them together.
Yeah.
It just feels like
just top down,
a very
bad audio
patchwork
editing
thing
on that part.
Yeah. Like there's all these different bits to it, and they just were not woven together at the end. So
that's where it's at. So who knows? It really just all from top to bottom. It's just everything was kind of mismanaged on all of that. Is what it seems like.
And that's a bummer too, because I remember playing the original ones that like immersion was one of the big things there, that like you could just soak yourself in this space.
Well, now the franchise is going to have this hanging over it too. So
what happens next?
What are we going to do with the next? What are we going to do with the next Mass Effect game? Is there going to be one?
Yeah,
Mass Effect Inquisition.
Well, I think a lot of people are disappointed. James on Facebook says waited so long for this and was jacked, and all I read is bad reviews. Just talking about it. Watch the Bad Glitches video, and now.
Oh yeah, I need to go watch that.
Yeah, the Bad Glitches video. Okay, well, there's a lot out there for you to find on there. All right, well, any final thoughts on this? Any final thoughts on Mass Effect Andromeda before we sign off?
I mean, just if you're getting it for PC, whatever your thoughts are about the quality of the game, make sure that you change that render scale so that you're not looking at a terrible looking game. And based on our performance results, if you have less than a GTX 1060 or an RX 480 video card, I wouldn't expect that you're going to get the optimal experience. You're going to want some recent mid-range hardware to be able to play at medium to high, depending on how tolerant you are of lower frame rates. If you have an older video card, I would say buy it on the console, or not at all.
Yeah.
Because you probably will get a bit better experience there.
Okay.
Never pre-order.
Never pre-order. Brad's mantra, never pre-order.
Unless it's a Nintendo Switch and Breath of the Wild.
Hey, I didn't pre-order. I didn't pre-order either of those things, and I got them the same day that everyone else did.
Yeah, he was a lot more stressed about it than me, though.
I don't know. I just got up early. Got up early and waited on at a grocery store.
Who wants to wait in line, though? See, you were making fun of me of who goes out to buy video games.
Look who goes to the store.
I did go out to buy right.
Okay. Yes.
I admit defeat.
All right. I think that's it for today. So there's an entire guide at digitaltrends.com, too. So if you are going to buy it, Mass Effect Andromeda Performance Guide, we've got reviews, all there, digitaltrends.com. And this is Close to the Metal. So this is our weekly podcast. We go live at 10 a.m. every Tuesday morning Pacific time. And we love to have you join us. We go in depth with specific items, specific topics dealing with computing. And we've got lots of back episodes for you to either watch on our YouTube channel or at digitaltrends.com or subscribe to the audio podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, where you can get all of those as well. Join us every week. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another episode. Yes.
Bam.